Hey guys, so today I'm going to show you how I go about producing a modern Architects type track like this. Personally, I like the direction they've gone in over the last few years, mainly because the production has just got bigger and bigger with these like industrial tinged stadium anthems that just sound huge. So that's what we're attempting to achieve today, and I'm going to start with a monstrous guitar riff and some monstrous drums, so let's jump right in. So I'm in drop C tuning. Architects, like a lot of bands, have got lower and lower over the years with their tunings until eventually they started doing the Korn trick. Yes, we're using the Korn tone in this video again. It wouldn't really be one of my videos if that wasn't in there somewhere. And Korn probably isn't even an influence on Architects or most modern metal bands, but they did this tone first and I'm hearing it everywhere now, which is awesome. It's like, finally. So yeah, no need to get your 10-string guitar out. We're gonna be in drop C. So I actually started out with the standard metal tone you see in a lot of these videos. A tube screamer going into the neural Fortin amp, tube screamer into some kind of high gain amp, basically. Not a whole lot to say about that. It's just like a normal metal tone, just boosting some mids, shaping some harshness in the high mids. Very standard, but what I'm doing is running it into this pitch proof plugin. And you can see here, I'm pitching it down an octave and just blending in some of that low octave, which just gives it that low feel, even though it's only drop C, and makes it so heavy. And it also makes it feel a bit more digital, which obviously in Architects' newer stuff, they want it to be a bit more kind of cyber industrial feeling. You know, we are digitally processing it more by using that octaver, so it sounds kind of unnatural. I'm not going to break down the Korn sound. We have it very quietly just layered in there to just beef up the main tone a little. But I did a video on that. It's not a complicated tone. So we have that in there as well, but the main tone is just that standard metal tone with a slight bit of low octave on it. So we'll track a riff in a second, but I'm just going to lay down some drums. Just the standard metal kit. I know they sell like an Architects drum kit. I could have bought that, but I wanted to see if I could get this one to sound like Architects, and I feel like I pretty much pulled it off. So I'm going to start off by just programming in like a simple bouncy drum beat, kind of new metal flavored. Like we're going 96 BPM, so it's going to have that bounce. So as you would expect, we're going to just have the snares on the 2 and the 4. Keeping the beat. And I don't usually do this because it sounds less natural, but their drums sound so processed. I find it sounds more like Architects if you just ramp the volume up to an inhuman level of volume. Like no one hits that hard every time, but to me it doesn't have that slap of modern Architects unless I really turn it up. So the first thing is the drums need to really be hitting hard. You want a lot of attack. So we've got the snare on the beat. We'll displace it a bit more with the kicks. We'll just throw some quiet offbeat hits in there as well. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with the kicks and the crashes. Pull it right up. All right, and now I'm going to take that and put it on each of these tracks. So I have the kick, the snare, overheads all on a separate track that I'm processing differently. So there's a lot of processing here. The drums in their music really might as well be programmed. Like they sound great, but they do not sound human. They just sound larger than life, utterly ridiculous. This kick drum without any processing is already huge. But listen to what I had to turn it into to get the Architects sound. So from that, I'll turn everything off and then on. So I'm boosting some highs for the slap and cutting some low mids to stop it getting muddy. Then just pulling down the release with this envelope shaper so that it's like a super quick slap without too much like woo after the kick has hit. And then I'm distorting the heck out of it with Decapitator and cutting more stuff. Some harsh higher frequencies and some muddy mid-range. All right, the snare, this was maybe the hardest thing to get right. Sounds kind of weird on its own, but to my ears in the mix, it sounds right. So first of all, I'm routing it out to a reverb track, which is just giving it that big kind of almost 80s, like just like an explosion. Compressing it and distorting it with LA2A. Compressing it with Decapitator. Again, shaping the envelope, boosting the attack, pulling down the release, so it's just a snappy attack. We've got a lot of low mids you can see here being boosted because there's so much, even though there is a lot of snap in the Architect snare, there's so much body in the low end as well. So I wanted to make sure I got that. A little bit of OTT to just get it snapping even harder, just compress the crap out of it. And then fresh air again to get more of that snap in the high end. All right, and then the cymbals, overheads, like in Architects music, the cymbals is like this constant, like really aggressive noise in the high end that just keeps the energy up. It's like, sounds less like crash, crash, and more just like a white noise that's always there, keeping this insane like energy and intensity. So I'm really focused on the high end in this. I cut a lot of low end. Again, a lot of Decapitator, really destroying the cymbals. A lot of compression to keep them super consistent. I don't want it to kind of fade. I don't want it to, it's got to be like super intense noise. Sounds awful on its own. But in the mix, everything's going to be so loud, we kind of just need something on the top keeping the energy up, so that's what the cymbals are doing. All right, so for now, that's something laid down on the drums. Let's get to the guitars finally. And again, keeping it simple. It's got to be stompy, got to be something people can bang their head to. So I'm going for like a minor pentatonic feel and just keeping it simple and bouncy, working with that, with those drums, working with that kick. And let's put it on the right as well. So I threw in that little pick scrape thing just to keep it like metalcore flavored and not too new metal. And at the end, just a minor second, so it's not too pentatonic, you know, add a little bit more dissonance, a little bit more darkness. And you can really hear how that octaving just turns it from what would be like a Rage Against the Machine kind of riff into definitely an Architects, Bring Me the Horizon kind of modern. And the reason we're keeping it simple is mainly because of the production. Like in modern Architects stuff, it's got simpler and simpler for the most part. You know, they used to be all that kind of stuff. I find that the more ridiculous you go with the production, the more you just need like a, you know, just one note so the listener can actually take in this massive production you've made rather than it just being like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? All right, so we'll quickly lay down bass guitar, and then believe it or not, we're nowhere near done. Like there's so much more to this sound than just what you would think, guitars, drums, and bass. So just quickly, this is not a very nice bass tone. In this kind of music, it often isn't. So I'm basically using like my go-to rock sound, but then putting it through temper. I'm using temper, this distortion effect, as a distortion pedal. Very just blown out distortion, super aggressive sounding. But it has what we need. This kind of music, like Architects and, you know, Periphery, anything with that kind of nolly bass sound, tends to just be a super distorted, consistent bass tone without sticking out too much. It's not got too much character to it. It's just like purely there to make the guitars sound huge. So that's all that we're really focused on. Kind of sounds like a mess on its own, but it's just got that strong distortion, strong compression. So it's just going to be very present the whole time backing up the guitars. And that's the only appearance the bass guitar is going to make in this video. We're onto like the synths and stuff now. If you saw the Marilyn Manson video, this is like a very similar approach. Not that you would expect it, but from what I can tell listening, there's a lot more synth in the modern Architects stuff than you would probably think. Like a lot of what makes it sound huge is the synthesizers. So right now we have... It's getting there, but it sounds a little bit untamed, a little bit kind of wild and just not quite as modern and clean as we want it to be. So we're going to be using Vital Synth for pretty much all the synth sounds in this. And I'm going to start with this one that I've called Huge Bass. And this is one of my favorite presets that I've just been working on for a few months. And I'm just going to straight up follow the guitar if it's a very distorted sound and we just want the synth to basically gel with the guitars and bass and all just work together to create one huge kind of digital and kind of human sound. So our riff is in the key of D. It's in drop C, but the key of D. The bass present in that is a lot more than in a proper bass guitar. Like it's hard to get that level of digital bass that you get from something like Vital from a real bass. So that's just filling in some frequencies that we need. And that sound, just to quickly break it down, we basically have quite a few effects. I'll just turn these off. Turn these off. So it's basically this triangle wave, this sine wave, and then this really nasty looking one, which together... You can hear we're getting like a strong hum from the sine wave and then the kind of grit on top from the other one. This triangle is just to kind of tie them both together. So then I've got chorus, which is kind of giving it this cold digital vibe. And then the key to this sound, as you probably guessed, is the insane distortion. So we're taking that and then just blowing it into oblivion. If that's not enough, we've got two clippers. So initial clipper and this Diablo light clipper, which all together turns it from this into this. So yeah, kind of a complicated one. Essentially, I just went for a nice digital synth-based sound and then did my favorite thing, just absolutely destroy it with distortion. All right, and then I'm just going to take that and put it on these two tracks. I think I broke this sound down more in the Manson video, so check that out if you want to get a bit more detail. But essentially, it's just really, really gnarly looking waves. And the important part of this sound is that I'm sending it into a guitar fuzz, which completely transforms it and makes it kind of almost sound like a guitar. Like on its own, it doesn't quite. But you can hear how next to the guitar, that's going to really work well. It's not going to stick out like there's a guitar and there's a synth. It's just going to sound like one huge. I just want to jump in, guys, and say if you're enjoying this video, hit the like, subscribe with notifications so you don't miss all the videos I've got coming up. If you're a singer or an artist, this track and my other tracks are all for sale in the description. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, you can hit me up via my email or Instagram in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get back into it. All right, so now we need an intro. So I'm just going to add an intro before this. And what I'm going to do is just print the audio for this guitar riff just from these two. All right, so I'm going to put it on this track called Architect's Guitar Intro. And all I'm going to do with this is, let's just cut it off here. So I'm going to automate it so that the volume gradually rises like this. And I've got it going into a wah pedal. So this is going to work with the volume swell and give us like a frequency swell as it progresses. So let's just copy exactly what the guitar does, pretty much like this. So now this should sound kind of like an Architect's intro. Perfect, and I'm going to add a couple more things before this intro's done. So let's just quickly take this. Just that. In the same way, I'm going to print the audio for that. So we'll just solo this track, the huge bass track that we had, and just take those notes. All right, so I bounced that out and I'm just going to put it on this track. So we're just going to emphasize the start of the bar like this. But that's a little too much. We don't need that much intensity in the intro, so I'm just going to bring down the high pass. And let's also just pull down the bass a little and maybe some mid-range. So not only does that feel more intense, but it also tells the listener straight away, this is not purely just your average metalcore song. You know, this has some more modern, more crazy like production elements. So I like to throw something like that in the intro where I can. All right, a couple more things. So the next one is this Hans Zimmer style cinematic drum slap. I used this in the Chord Hell video a few weeks ago. So same kind of thing. I basically found a free sample online and turned it into something just way more intense. So check out the Chord Hell video if you want to see a bit more of a breakdown on this sound, but basically just a very big cinematic kind of sounding drum effect. So again, that's just to kind of give the listener some intensity, tell them straight away this is going to be heavy, but you're not getting it quite yet. You're going to have to wait for it to drop. Okay, one more thing for this intro, and I'm going to take the drums. And again, just print the audio for that and bring it back in. So, all right, so here that is, and I've put it on this track, which is going to completely change the sound from this into this. So we basically have a high and low pass filter just bringing out the top and bottom end so it's not too intense either way. Then making it lo-fi with Vinyl and Bit Crusher. Again, high and low pass in it because those two plugins add more information on the top and bottom. We're then running into a ping pong delay, a stereo imager, this auto pan plugin that kind of bounces it from left to right like a ping pong delay, and reverb, a little bit of reverb, which is cool, but I want to make it a bit more glitchy. So I'm just going to go in and chop the whole thing up, make it a little more Linkin Park even. So let's go like this. And the last thing we'll do is the same thing we've done with those last few tracks. Let's just automate it like that so it kind of slowly creeps up. So that just kind of adds the texture and keeps things a little bit more interesting in the intro. We don't want to give the listener everything yet, but we want to build the energy and we want it to feel like something's dancing around in the background. All right, and one more little detail for this main riff. I'm just going to take this super saw, which I made in Vital. Whatever DAW you're using, there will be some kind of like trancey super saw wave in there. So we're in the key of D. What I'm going to do is program in a C note so that we have the minor seventh kind of dissonant, and then we'll slowly bend it up like a siren. It's going to bend up to the D like that. Wouldn't be Architects without a little bit of that in there. All right, that's the start of the song all done. Now we need a verse, and it wouldn't be Architects without some kind of emotional, dreamy, reverby kind of verse. So that's what we're going to do now, which is a whole other challenge in itself. Their verses and their choruses are such different things. It's like creating two songs. So we're going to switch the vibe up completely, starting with like this post-rock guitar sound. So I'm using an SS11X purely for the clean sound, which is Really, really good for clean tones. I don't like it much for distorted tones, but it's a good plugin for cleans. And then again, doing the whole like dreamy thing, pull out some strong mids and some top and bottom. Keep it dreamy, keep it kind of far away feeling. You don't want it too in your face. Stereo imager to make it huge. Delay, reverb, supercharger, compression. So nothing you wouldn't expect, but just a lot more effects than you would usually use in something like metalcore. We also then have a second delay track, which is the same thing, but going into this rotary speaker that you probably saw me using like the new metal video not long ago. I've been using this a lot. And then the other thing is this CRMBL plugin I found, which is like the craziest delay. You can reverse it, chew, whatever that means. I've got it pitched down an octave, so basically the reason I'm using that is to just fill in all the space where I'm not playing. You want to always have some delay, some kind of atmospheres, soundscapes going on in this kind of music. There's always some kind of delay ringing out, some kind of effects. Fill in the whole frequency spectrum so you're always hearing some kind of atmosphere. So I'm going to start with that one, just lay down some kind of emotional notes. Again, keeping it simple, pentatonic minor kind of stuff, just nice and emotional, but not too busy. And let's start the verse with just the kind of chill one, and then we'll bring in the other one. And there's still a lot more to add in this verse. It's going to be so Architects, trust me. First, we're going to add, this is just like the basic grand piano in Cubase. Very basic, but I'm putting it through some delay and pulling out some lows and highs again. Pretty much everything in this verse, we're going to be pulling out the lows and the highs so that everything feels far away. Nothing's too up front. So we're just going to copy exactly what the guitar's playing there. So I do actually notice a lot of piano in Architects music. Like maybe it doesn't jump out at you as much, but it definitely layers with the guitars in a lot of their verses to just create a bit more emotion, a bit more vibe. All right, then we have another Vital preset, and it's actually not like a destroyed awful bass sound. This one is actually quite nice, so I am capable of nice sounds too. And we're just going to lay down some chords. Very, very simple still. This is just going to be an atmosphere. This isn't like going to be a melody. So a D minor chord. And down to an A sharp, which is there. You can hear how important that is. Like without it, it's just a couple of instruments. With it, it's a whole atmosphere. It becomes a song. This sound is probably a bit too complicated to break down. There's so much going on, so many effects, but it's essentially like a synth strings preset. So again, whatever DAW you're using, there will be some kind of pad that's like a synth strings or like just any kind of ambient pad. That's just what I ended up creating in Vital, but they basically just use ambient kind of pad sounds. And we're almost there with the verse. I'm just going to take these drums that we chopped up in the intro, the kind of textured drums, and let's just put those here. And one of the last things for the verse, this Nemesis drum kit that I keep using, very industrial, digital kind of sound. Listen to that kick. Again, very atmospheric, very background, but very, very intense. So that's what we're looking for. Same with those hats. There. And listen to how much those drums finish this sound off. All right, last thing for the verse. After a bar, we'll bring in this track that I've called Bass Swell. Another one I made in Vital. And this one is a bit more powerful, but still I'm going to keep it in the background. You can hear how that rises and falls. And that's going to be, again, kind of like a cinematic sound in the background. Again, it's kind of a complicated one to explain, but you can see there's not a lot of jagged edges going on here for once. Like I'm only using sine waves to keep it nice and smooth. Sine is as smooth as it gets. And then I'm just pushing it a bit with the distortion and compression, just so it's got some of that harmonic distortion to help it stick out a little bit. You know, I don't want this to only be heard if you're listening on like a car speaker or something. So there's that little bit of like on top of it just so it sticks out. And yeah, I'm just automating the filter here, you can see. So it kind of grows, rises and falls. You've got here and here. You can see how it's swelling and dropping back down. All right, and that is pretty much all the sounds I'm using in this track. Obviously, we've not finished, like there's a chorus and stuff, but I've pretty much broken everything down for you guys there. So I'm going to show you the final mix now, where you can hear all of these elements working together and hopefully replicating Architect's sound in a convincing way. So I'll show you guys the whole thing now, skipping through where it repeats. Thank you as always for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you want more of this. Architects, attempt 1. Let's go.